All right. Morning, everyone. How's everybody doing today? So today, let's see who we've got with us. So we have Beatrix and Imogen, who are sometimes in the room with me, but now they're in their own separate room. So they're actually in the same house as Mei-Ling and I. And then Sebastian, is that right? Thumbs up. Yep. And then Eden. Eden, how old are you?
I'm 8 years old. This year I'm going to be 9.
Awesome. And Sebastian, you are 4 or 5? 5. Awesome. That's how old Imogen is. And then Beatrix is 7 and almost 8. All right, so we got good mix of ages here. So today we're going to talk about something called friction. You guys know what friction is? Who's heard of friction? Raise your hand if you've heard of friction. See one hand. Eden, what do you say friction is?
Friction is like, well, in books it's not real.
So friction is real, and we can feel it all the time and see it all the time. And actually, go ahead, Sebastian.
Do you want to say something?
Wow.
Okay.
Huh?
What do you think? Image, or go ahead, Sebastian.
Dang it, something happened.
You tell that.
So let's think of a different way. Can you guys, okay, so let's say friction is what happens when two things rub together. So let's take our hands, put your hands together like this, and rub them together really fast. What do you guys feel? What do you feel? What are some of the things you guys feel when you rub your hands together? Does
I
it feel
feel very
cold?
hot heat. I feel very hot heat.
Starts to warm up. What else do you feel? Is it nice and smooth, or do your
It's
hands kind of
kind of
stick together?
A little bit bumpy and a little bit smooth.
Okay, so I want you to try it again, but don't press your hands together too hard. Just put them together very lightly and rub them together again really fast. Does it feel any different?
It feels colder. It feels softer.
So let's try something else. Let's push our hands together really hard. Push them together as hard as you can. And now try to rub them. What happens?
It feels really bumpy and really, really hot.
Yeah, is it easier or harder to rub your hands together when you're pushing them together?
Harder.
Harder, right? So the harder you push together, the harder it is for me to get my hands to go apart. All right, so friction is what happens when two things rub up against each other. It's kind of that force or that interaction between two surfaces. So in this case, it's two hands. Can you guys think of some other examples of where friction might be happening? What are some other examples of two surfaces rubbing against each other? What about when you're driving in the car and want to stop? What do you guys use to, or what do your parents use to stop the car when it's going forward? Brakes, right? So those brakes are causing friction to happen. So something's pressing against the tire of your car inside of your car and getting those wheels to stop. What about your foot on the ground? Go ahead, Imogen.
The floor presses against it.
Right. So what would happen if there was no friction? What do you think your foot would do if it hit the ground? What happens when you guys run across? Do you have hardwood floors at home and you run across them with just your socks on, no shoes? Is it slippery or is it easy to walk?
Slippery.
So you guys go sliding across, right? But when you put on a shoe, what happens? Can you slide in your shoes?
No. You
No.
stop.
So that's friction, right? So do you think there's a lot of friction when we wear our socks or not much friction?
Not much friction.
Not much friction, right? Because it's very slippery. What about when we wear our shoes? Do you think there's more friction or less friction?
More.
More friction. What about, let's think of an example where friction is bad, right? What about when you're sledding down a hill? I mean, who's been sledding? Raise your hand if you've been sledding. think Imogen and Beatrix, you have before, but you were really little. So when you go sledding, do you want the snow to really grip the bottom of your sled, or do you want it to slide across the top?
Your sled to stick or slide?
Slide.
You want it to slide, you want it to glide. So you want very little friction. What about when you go on a slide at the playground?
It's less friction.
Yeah, you want less friction, right? If you were on a slide and your bottom, your clothes, pants were sticking to the bottom of that slide, it wouldn't be a very fun slide, would it?
Yeah.
Okay, so friction is all around. There's friction everywhere. And I want to show, I know this is a little bit advanced for this group, but I want to show this. I should have reversed the, hold on, let me mirror my video here.
We're seeing it normally.
Oh, you are? Okay.
Yeah.
It's reversed on mine. Okay, so this is what we call, this says the force of friction, and it's equal to two things that we've just talked about already. One, so this is a Greek letter. It's called mu. Who plays Pokemon? You guys know about Pokemon? So there's a Pokemon called Mew. That's how you say it. So it's kind of a funky letter, but you pronounce it Mew. Okay, and then this is a force. We call it the normal force, but it's basically the weight, how hard something is pressing against a surface. So this coefficient of friction is how rough something is, and this is how hard things are pressing together. So I want to talk about both of these things. We're going to talk about how rough something is, and then we're going to talk about how heavy or how hard something is pressing against it. And we're going to do a whole bunch of experiments and talk about friction in different ways. We'll do some that are a little bit like magic tricks, right? Really interesting and different and weird. All right, so I've got two books here. Harry Potter book, pretty heavy. And I'm gonna push it across the table. And it's pretty easy to push, right? Not too hard at all. You guys can try this at home later. Now, what if I put more books on top? Think it'll be easier or harder to push across the table?
Harder.
Harder. Why do you guys think it would be harder?
Because they're small books.
Well, yeah, there's more books, but what's happening? So it's the same surface, right? The book and the table are still the same. What am I changing?
The weight. The weight.
Right, I'm changing how hard I'm pushing down against the table. And can you guys think back to the example with the hands? When our hands were just kind of placed together and rubbing them together, it wasn't too hard. But as soon as we start pushing them together hard, it got really hard to get them to slide apart. So friction was bigger. So when I put more weight on the table and press down hard on the table, it gets much harder. See, I'm pushing with one finger. It's much harder to push across the table, right? So weight and how hard two surfaces are pressing together really affect the force of friction. Okay, so we're gonna do an experiment. All right, I've got a ramp. It's just a cardboard box, nothing fancy. And I've got 3 blocks, or 4 blocks to start out with. I'll show you what these blocks are. All right, there's one block. You guys play the game Jenga where you stack up the blocks? Yeah, so these are Jenga blocks. So this is a regular Jenga block, nothing fancy about it. Then I took a Jenga block and I wrapped it in foil. It's very bright there. I don't know if you guys can see that. I'll kind of move it around. You can see how shiny it is. So it's completely wrapped in foil. Got another Jenga block and I put it in bubble wrap. You guys see that? Hold it up close. So it's all wrapped up in bubble wrap. And I've got another one and I put sandpaper on the bottom of it. Okay, so what I'm going to do, let me move this over a little bit so you guys can see it. So I'm going to put these blocks at the top of the ramp and we're going to try to guess which one will go down the ramp first. Okay, so I have the regular block here. That's the one that's closest to you guys. I have the foil block just to the side there. I'm going to put the bubble wrap block next. And then I've got the sandpaper block that's closest to me. All right, let's make some guesses. Which one do you guys think will start moving down the ramp? So I'm going to start lifting the ramp up. And as I lift it up, these blocks are going to move. Which one do you think will go first?
Regular.
Which one?
Sandpaper block.
The sandpaper one's going to go down first, do you think? What else do you guys think? Which one do you think will start moving first?
The one with nothing on it.
Well, with nothing on it. Okay, so we've got a
Nothing
vote
on
for
it.
nothing on it and one for sandpaper. What do you think, Sebastian?
Nothing on it.
And what do you think, Eden? Which one do you think will go down?
foil.
Okay,
Foil.
so I think we have a vote for all of them except for the bubble wrap, right? So let's see what happens. So remember, this is regular block, foil block, bubble wrap block, and then the sandpaper block. Okay, so I'm going to start lifting up. I'm going to do it really slowly so we can see which one starts going first.
The foil.
The foil block. Eden was right. Okay, I'm going to keep going up. Okay, let's see. So which one do you guys think will be next? So we have regular block, bubble wrap, and sandpaper. Which one do you think will go next?
Sandpaper. Sandpaper.
Sandpaper.
Here's some sandpaper. Here's some bubble wrap. Let's keep going. You have to get a little bit steeper. It was the regular block that went next. All right, so I've got two left. Sandpaper and bubble wrap. What do you guys think?
Sandpaper. Sandpaper.
Sandpaper.
Right. I hear one bubble wrap and some sandpapers.
What?
There goes the bubble wrap. Let's keep going. Let's see if I can make the sandpaper one go. Let's hope it stays in the screen. There it goes. All right, so let's put them in order. All right, we had the foil block went first. We had the regular block. You guys can't really see that. Foil, regular block, bubble wrap, and then sandpaper. All right, so how much do these blocks weigh? Do they all weigh the same or they weigh different amounts?
Different amounts.
They're pretty close. So yeah, that was a little bit of a different question because I put different things to them, but they're all pretty similar in weight, right? They're all about the size of a block. So they all slid down differently. We know that they're pressing against the cardboard about the same with the same pressure, but what's different about them? It's the friction, right? How rough they are. Okay, so which one was the least rough? Which one had the least friction? The foil, right? So the foil is actually nice and smooth. If I run my hand against it, it's very, very smooth. The next one was the regular block. So that had a little more friction, but still not that much. Again, it feels pretty smooth there. Bubble wrap, getting rougher. Sandpaper, I don't even really want to rub my hand against that. That kind of hurts. All right. So each of these surfaces have different, you guys remember that mu that I talked about? The coefficient of friction or how rough they are and how they interact with this cardboard is different for all these different objects. All right, so we're going to do another test. This time I've got blocks, all of them have sandpaper on them. Okay, but what's different on this sandpaper? Have you guys ever used sandpaper before?
I've never used sandpaper in my life.
Okay, so sandpaper, do you guys know what sandpaper is used for? What do we use sandpaper for?
To smooth wood.
To smooth wood, good, or to get rough edges off of things, right? So sandpaper, actually, the whole idea behind sandpaper is friction, right? So if I rub sandpaper against something, friction will cause that surface to get smoother and rub pieces of it off. Okay, so sandpaper comes in different size grit, right? So grit is basically the size of the little pieces of sand that are on top of the sandpaper. So I've got 3 different examples. The one I used first, so you can't really see, it doesn't have any marking on it, but this is the one with the biggest pieces of sand on it. Okay, the next one has slightly bigger pieces of sand and I put a black rectangle on it. Okay, so this is the next biggest. So the grains so these are the biggest, these are a little bit smaller. And then this one with the blue circle is the smallest. Okay, so it has the smallest size grains. And actually it doesn't feel too rough, but it's got all these little pieces on it, pieces of sand. So we're gonna do the same test here. We're gonna see which one will go down the ramp. What do you guys think? Do you think the one with the biggest pieces of sand on it will go down first? Or do you think the one with the smallest pieces of sand will go down first?
Smallest.
So remember, blue is the smallest. So let's put the blue one closest to the computer. Let's put the black square next. And then let's put the one with the biggest grains last. And I'm gonna start lifting it up or we're gonna see which one goes first. So everybody said, we all think that the blue one is gonna go first because it's got the smallest pieces of sand. All right, ready? Here we go. I'm gonna do it slowly. I'm gonna do it kind of quickly actually, because it's gonna take a little bit for it to go down. Still nothing moving. I'm gonna turn it towards you a little bit so you can kind of see. I don't see anything moving.
Why aren't they moving? What?
Okay, so the one with the biggest ones move first. Okay, let's keep going and let's see. Which one's going next?
Middle. I saw the middle one move.
Still going. I'm trying to keep it in the camera here.
What are you? What?
All right.
The
Did
Middle
they
one went first. The middle one went
just-
last. Go ahead.
Did
What were you
they?
gonna say?
Did they just fall off the table?
They started to. So let's do the experiment one more time and see. Okay, so the one with the biggest grains, it went first, right? Move
Mhm.
them a little bit closer together. So let's test that again. Okay, let's keep going. I'm gonna turn it towards you guys so you can see a little bit.
They're the smallest.
Second.
Hmm, interesting. So, yeah, so the second one is the one that went last both times. Let's try it one more time. We're not getting a good, a very clear result here on the grain size, but we do know that the one with the biggest grains went first, right? And the smaller grain ones went last. Let's do it one more time. All right. Okay. So what happened? Which size grains, bigger made it go first or smaller made it go first?
Bigger.
It was the bigger ones, right? Yep. All right. So the bigger the grains, the faster it went down, which is a little strange, right? That wasn't what we had guessed. So it's not necessarily about how rough something feels to like our fingers or how much we think it is. It's how that this interacts with the surface that it's sliding on. So that coefficient of friction, that mu that we talked about, depends on the surface that it's touching and also how it interacts with the little, kind of at a very small level, the little pieces of sand that are in the sandpaper. Okay, and it's pretty amazing too. I mean, so this is the smoothest one. Let's press it down, but you can go, you see with let me do this one. The force of friction allows us, you guys would have thought it would start moving by now, right? But you can keep going up and up, but that's all because of friction. It's holding it right there. Okay, is that cool? All right, so we're gonna do one more experiment with the ramp and then we're gonna move on to something else. All right, so I've got a race car, a blue race car here. Put this. So we're gonna test this race car going down this ramp. So it's got 4 wheels, right? So this is like the car when you drive a car on the road. When you guys go over different kinds of roads, are some roads bumpy and some roads kind of smooth? Yep. So we're going to do a test about how your car is affected by different types of roads. And we've got 3 roads. And let's see if you guys have actually driven on roads like this. Have you ever driven on a road covered by bubble wrap?
I don't think we've driven in a road covered by bubble wrap.
I don't think they actually exist. It would be really noisy because you would be popping all these bubbles. So we're gonna pretend like this is a bumpy road, right? Little bumps all over the road. We're gonna test that. We're gonna put it on top of our ramp and see how the car slides down. Then the next one, you guys ever driven on a road covered by a towel?
No.
That would be weird again, wouldn't it? But we're gonna pretend like this is a nice rough road, right? Some roads are kind of rough. So our towel is going to simulate, or we're going to pretend like it's a rough road. And then here's our nicely paved road, all right? And we're going to see how this car slides down. You guys are going to tell me which one's fastest. Which one do you think is going to be the fastest? The smooth pavement or the bubble wrapper top? Smooth.
No.
Which one do you guys think will be the slowest? The bubble wrap or the towel?
Bubble wrap. No, towel.
Okay, it's just a regular towel. It's not a magic towel or anything. Like I don't have a magic towel, so it's just gonna be normal bath towel, like the ones you guys dry yourselves off with. And normal bubble wrap again, not magic bubble wrap. So let's test. Okay, so first I'm gonna try the car. It slides pretty well. I'm gonna try the car going down the ramp on its own. Let's see how fast it goes. Pretty fast, right?
Pretty
Which one
fast.
should I try next? The bubble wrap or the towel?
Towel.
Here, one vote for bubble wrap. Let's do the towel because I've got it in my hands here. All right, I'm gonna lay this over top of the ramp. I'm gonna smooth it out just so it doesn't have like really big bumps in it. And let's see what happens. Smooth. Okay. What do you guys think is gonna happen when I let this go?
It's gonna be really slow.
All right, here we go.
Oh, it's actually fast.
Was it faster or slower than the smooth pavement?
Slower, but it was slower, but it's going fast, kind of.
Still going pretty fast. All right, let's do.
So bubble wrap is probably going to be not the fastest because I've been learning about like rough and stuff in school. So it's not going to be this one is going to be the slowest for sure.
What do you think, Sebastian? Slower or faster than the towel? Slower. What do you think? You think slower? Okay. Let's let it go and we'll see what happens. Interesting.
It's
So
not
let's try
even
to.
moving.
So what does that say? So it won't even move. Is that a lot of friction or not much friction?
A lot of friction.
Let's make it a little bit higher. Let's see if we can get it to go.
Hey,
Ready?
finally did it.
There it goes.
It
All
popped
right.
bubble wrap, so it made a path.
It didn't actually pop any, but if it was a little bit heavier, it definitely would. So which one was the roughest? Which one had the most friction?
Bubble wrap.
The bubble wrap. And which one had the next
Bubble
most?
wrap, bubble wrap.
Towel.
Towel. Then the normal cardboard.
So
Towel.
when you're driving somewhere, so say you're driving to vacation, you're going on a long road trip. Do you want your car to go as quickly as possible? As the speed limit allows, of course. You want it to be able to go quickly, right?
Mhm.
And not use much gas. You don't want to use a whole bunch of gas to have to stop at the gas station, take that much longer to get to your vacation, right? So do you think we want our roads to be nice and smooth, or do you think we want to be bumpy? What do you guys think?
Nice and smooth.
Yep. You do want them to be nice and smooth, but what would happen if they're too smooth? Has anybody tried to been driving on snow or ice? It's very slippery, right? It's very hard to brake. I mean, obviously you guys have, hopefully you have not driven on snow or ice, but if you have, it's really hard for your car to stop because there's not much friction between the tire and the road that's covered in ice or snow. So there's a balance there, right? You want it to be nice and smooth so your car can go over it, but you also want to make sure that your car can brake, that your tires have enough friction they can stop. So there's a lot of thought that goes into road design and trying to understand exactly how rough to make the road so that friction works exactly the way that you want it to. All right. So we've got a couple more experiments here. We're done with the ramp for now. I've got 3 water bottles filled with different things.
Rice, sand, and coconut.
All right. So this first one here is filled with rice. Okay, just normal grains of rice. The second one, what do you guys think this is filled with?
Sand.
Sand. What do you guys think this last one is filled with?
Beans.
Cereal.
Cocoa Puff.
They're
Cocoa
Cocoa Pebbles.
Puffy.
Beatrix helped me do it, so she knows. So a relatively unhealthy cereal, but tasty cereal. Cocoa Pebbles are in here. Okay, so they're all different sizes. So which one? So if we think about each little piece, little particle of rice, sand, or Cocoa Pebbles, which one has the biggest? Which one's the biggest grain? So if I take one piece of sand, one piece of rice, and one piece of Cocoa Pebble.
Cocoa Pebbles.
Cocoa Pebbles the best. Okay, so let's order it. So Cocoa Pebbles, what's next? Rice or sand?
Rice.
Rice
Sand.
and sand. And so actually these are ordered by weight too. So which one do you guys think is heaviest?
Cocoa Puff. No, sand. Sand.
Sand and then the rice. So the sand is really heavy because I've really packed this down. The rice is second heaviest, and then the Cocoa Pebbles are actually pretty light, but I have tried to pack these down. I've tried to knock out any air down there. So what I'm going to do, got a chopstick, just a regular chopstick, and I'm going to stick the chopstick into each of these, and I'm going to see how hard it is to pull it back out. So when I stick it down into the different bottles, what do you think's happening to the chopstick?
I think it's starting to go down and stay down and getting heavier and heavier.
So what happens? So if I take the chopstick, I close my hand around it and I move it back and forth. What do you think I feel? You try this with a pencil too if you want it. It starts to feel a little bit warm, kind of like when I rub my hands together. So there's friction that's happening between the chopstick and my hand, what's holding onto it. So when I push these down into the bottle, these different things are going to pull on the chopstick. They're going to have friction. So when I try to pull it back out, that friction is going to determine if I'm able to pull it back out or not. Okay, so I'm going to put this chopstick down into each one of these. Which one do you think I'll be able to lift up by the chopstick? So when I put that chopstick all the way down and try to lift it up, do you think it'll stick or do you think it'll come right back out? What do you guys think for the Cocoa Pebbles? Stick or come right back out?
Come right back out.
Come right back out? What do you guys think for the rice? Stick or come right back out?
Come right back out.
Come right back up.
What do you guys think for the sand? Stick or come right back out?
Stick.
All right, you have to keep in mind too, as I start to pull it out, this is really heavy, right? Really heavy. So when I try to pull it back out, it might be so heavy that the chopstick still comes out. So let's try it. Let's start with the cocoa pebbles first. All right, I'm going down into the cocoa pebbles. All right, I'm all the way down. I'm gonna try to lift it up. Come straight back out. I can feel it kind of grabbing on, but not all the way. All right, and then you guys thought that the sand would stick. Let's try the sand. The sand is super heavy, but let's see if it works. I'm gonna stick it down in there. It doesn't go down too bad. Now it's getting a little bit hard. I have to press hard. All right, what do you guys think is gonna happen when I try to lift the chopstick up?
Stick. Stick.
Here we go.
It came out.
Let's try again. It wants to lift up, but what's happening, do you think? It's definitely stuck in there better. Let me try it one more time here. Oh, hit a big thud.
Hey.
It's so heavy, but there is a lot of friction, but it's so heavy, it's trying to pull it back down.
I might
All
be
right.
able to try this experiment at San Diego because we're going there for spring break.
You can definitely try it because you have a lot of sand there in San Diego, right by the beach. Okay, so let's try the rice. What do you guys think on the rice?
I think it's going to I think it's gonna come out right away.
I'm pushing down.
No, actually, I think it's gonna stay in.
All right, you guys think so? So it's not as heavy as the sand. It's got some bigger grains than the sand. So this was very light, but really big grains, right? Similar to what we saw with the sandpaper, right? Those big grains, it didn't stick, they went first. So it's bigger grains. So now we've got small grains, but really heavy. And then we've got medium-sized grains, but lighter. Okay, here we go.
It's stuck, like I said.
It's stuck.
It's stuck
I just hit it and it came out.
Oh,
Let's try it again. Let's try each one again. Let's try the cocoa pebbles. Stick it down. Okay, that's not going to work at all.
It's
Go ahead.
gonna stay.
This one, it wants to come out. I can feel it like starting to grab, but then it just won't. Oh, here we go.
There it goes. Just staying
All
again.
right. Let's try this rice one more time.
Ricey,
Down.
rice.
I'm able to move it around. It's really, really stuck in there.
If it falls, it's gonna spill all over.
It will. I have a history of making a huge mess with the eggs last time, so I'm going to try not to do that this time.
I wasn't here with the eggs. I wish I
Yeah,
was here with the eggs.
We smashed a lot of eggs. I'm sure that in future ones of these, I will also make a big mess, possibly with eggs. I don't know. We'll see. But anyway, so which one has the most friction? Actually, I'm trying to pull this out now. There it goes. Which one of these has the most friction?
The sand has no. The pebbles have the most friction.
The pebbles have the least friction, right? Because it came straight back out.
Oh yeah, I forgot.
And then these two, it's kind of hard to tell because this one is so heavy that that's affecting it. So it's not just the grain size and how they interact. It's also a little bit of the weight of what you're trying to lift up. So basically these rice and the sand have a lot of friction associated with them. And we try to pull it up, it just gets stuck. All right, so we've got one more experiment to do here, which is, I think, really interesting. All right.
Time goes so fast, and it's already almost time to end the meeting.
Yeah, but this experiment, I think, is the coolest. And Beatrix and Imogen have already helped me out with this. So I'm actually I've got two notepads here. I'm gonna rip out two pieces of paper real quick, just as an example. All right, so I've got these two pieces of paper here. And if you have two pieces of paper at home, so take those two pieces of paper and just try to slide them apart, right? It's pretty easy to do, right? They come apart nice and easy. But there is friction between them, right? Do you think there's a lot of friction or a little bit of friction between two pieces of paper?
I think there is
Little bit.
a little bit, probably, like she
Little
just
bit, right?
said.
Little bit.
All right, so I'm going to tell you what I've done with this. So these are two spiral notebooks, and this is what I had Beatrix and Imogen do, and I think their arms got tired doing it, but you can certainly try this at home. So I opened these up, and I lined up the back just like this, okay? And then I took one, or the girls did, took one sheet of paper from one side, and then one sheet of paper from the other side, and I kept repeating that back and forth over and over again until they combined all of these together. I don't know if you guys can see that, it's a little bright, but these two are combined together. And what I want to do is now pull these apart. All right, so remember in this example, I have two pieces of paper rubbing against each other. Now I have 200 pieces of paper rubbing against each other. So I've increased the amount of friction by about 200 times versus two pieces of paper. And I'm going to take these, I'm going to try to pull as hard as I can to pull them apart. Do you guys think I'm going to be able to pull them apart?
No.
I don't think you're gonna be able to pull them apart.
I'm really, really, really strong though. So keep that in mind. Do you guys think I can do it since I'm so strong?
Maybe my dad and you could both do it.
I'm not actually that strong, but anyway, okay, so I'm going to pull as hard as I can. Ready? 1, 2, 3. I'm pulling as hard as I can. Does it look like they're moving at all? Let me try to line it up here. Pulling as hard as I can. Pulling really, really hard. They're not budging at all. And it's actually going to be a lot of trouble to try to get these separated from each other, but I will because it's a waste of paper otherwise. But these are really, really stuck together. And the reason they're stuck together is just because of friction. That's all it is. Right? That makes sense? All right. So let's do a little experiment here. So how many pieces of paper do you guys think I have to put together in order to get these two? So these are bigger ones. How many pieces do you think I should fold together to try to get it to stick? Should I try 10 first? Do that. I'll count in my head.
Count my head.
We're not going to do all of these just because it's going to take too long to fold all these pieces of paper. But this is something you guys can try at home. So you can see how many of these you need to put together to stick together. Let's do one more of each. All right. All right, so I'm gonna pull these up. So I did about 10 pieces of paper, pull them together. So that was 10 pieces of paper. So that was 200 down there. This is 10. And now I'm pulling these apart as hard as I can. And I already can't do it. So it doesn't take very many pieces of paper, very much friction. As soon as you start folding those up and start increasing the friction, you can't pull it apart. So I made the girls do all 100 pages on each sheet, but really they only had to do 10 pieces on each sheet, right? They're probably mad at me now because their arms are tired. But anyway, you guys can try this at home. See how many sheets that it would take to put together. Maybe it's 5, maybe it's 3. Maybe it depends how strong you are and how you're able to pull it apart. But this is all just friction that's happening in between this. Is that cool? It's a cool trick to play in your friends at school, because once you're back in school, these binders are very common. You can, if your friend has 2 of them, tell them to fold over, I don't know, like 5, 10 sheets, and then ask them to pull it apart, and they won't be able to.
I'm already back to school, but we don't get binders like that.
Yeah, okay. Maybe these binders are not as in use anymore, but yeah, if you want to trick your friends or trick your family, definitely try this, because it's kind of surprising that just a few sheets of paper stuck together can cause them to not come apart, layered together can cause it to not come apart. Do you guys remember the Sandcastle Experiment? I don't know if that was last time, wasn't it? Or was that 2 times ago?
I don't remember. I wasn't at these classes. I think this is my first time at these classes.
Yeah, so this will be good for when you go on vacation. If you're on the beach and building a sandcastle, remember how we layered up the sand and we put paper towels in between the sand? So that those paper towels were increasing the friction between the sand and stopping them from coming apart. So it really increased the strength of our sandcastle, our little tower that we built. So it's the same idea. So friction is everywhere. All right, so let me see. I think just to kind of wrap up for today and maybe go back over what we talked about. So let's start with what is friction? Do you guys have a way of defining friction? If someone were to come up to and ask you, what is friction? What would you say?
I would say friction is I don't know.
What do you think, Sebastian?
I don't.
If so, Beatrix or Imogen, if I said, what is friction? What would you say?
It's 2 things rubbing against each other.
Yep. So friction is what happens when 2 things rub against each other. And it's a force, but really it's just what happens. It's how 2 surfaces interact. It's how 2 things rub against each other. Sometimes it makes heat. You can feel the heat. Sometimes it makes your hand stop, all that stuff. What are some examples where a lot of friction is good? What's an example of when a lot of friction is good?
When you have to stop a car.
When you have to stop a car? What about when you're walking down the street? What if your shoes had no friction? What if you were walking on ice shoes? Would that be good? Could be kind of fun at first, but then it would get kind of annoying after a while, right? So it's good to have friction between your shoes. What are some times when it's not good when you don't want friction?
The thing that's not good when you want when you don't want, my tongue is tied.
That happens. So when you don't want friction, what are some times you don't want friction? What about at the playground? What's an example you can think of when you're at the playground when you don't want much friction?
When you're sliding down.
Yeah, when you go down a slide, right? It would not be. What if your slide was covered by sandpaper? That would not be
I
good.
would not go on the slide.
So one, it would probably hurt, but two, it also just wouldn't be much fun because you wouldn't go anywhere. I think you would just stick at the top, right? What about when it snows? What's an example of when we don't want much friction to do with snow?
Well, it's already not fiction because you don't rub against it because it's like hard and bumpy.
Yeah, when you're sledding down a hill, right? Okay, so yeah, there's times when friction is really good. There's times when you want a little bit less friction, maybe just to do fun things like go on a slide and go sledding. So what are the some of the things? Or go ahead.
My slide at school is actually very slippery, so it's not friction.
Yeah, is it? Do you go really fast on it?
Yeah, I go really fast and it also jumps me off.
Oof, that sounds pretty exciting, but maybe a little dangerous too.
Yes.
All right. So, what are some things that have very little friction? Do you guys remember the first block experiment? We did bubble wrap, foil, just regular wood block, and sandpaper. Which one had the least friction?
The foil.
Right. The foil was really slippery. Which one had the most friction in that experiment?
Sandpaper.
Sandpaper. Okay. What about the example with the road? Which one had the most friction? We had bubble wrap, we had a towel, and then we just had the regular cardboard.
Bubble wrap.
We had the bubble wrap.
Yep, the bubble wrap had the most friction with the tires of the car. All right, so there's all these different surfaces, all these different things cause friction in a different way, and it goes back to that we talked about mu at the beginning. Again, if you know Pokemon, that's the name of a Pokemon, that's how you say it, but that's that coefficient of friction. That's basically how rough something is. So everything has a different coefficient of friction that affects things. All right, so I think we're about out of time. Do you guys have any questions at all about friction or anything else just to wrap up?
Not me. Nope.
It is a. Go ahead, Eden.
I wanted to tell you that if you are stuck with the books, my dad could help you because he used to be a boxer.
Yeah, that's what you should try to test your dad and see if you put these different sheets together, see at what point he's able to pull them apart. That would be cool.
He's a very good protector to me. He protects me very good.
Yeah, it sounds like he's super strong. So I think he'd be a really good person to test the experiment on.
He actually
you could try
did,
it yourself, and then he could try it.
He did 100 sit-ups a day. 100 sit-ups a day.
That's a lot of sit-ups. I could not do 100 sit-ups a day. Very cool. Okay, so thanks all for joining. It's a really nice day outside. I think I'm going to go take the girls outside and go play outside a little bit and have a good weekend.
Bye.
Have a good
Bye, everyone.